Last week, we talked about slope and how we can find it both with graphing, like we did in Algebra 1, as well as our formula, y minus y over x minus x. Today, we're going to talk about how we can apply those slope concepts to parallel and perpendicular lines. Before we do, let's talk about parallel lines for a second. Our parallel lines are two lines that never intersect, and you can notate them either by the double L's, like in parallel, the two parallel lines in between our line names, or we can have these two arrows marked, one on each line, to show that they're parallel. Now, because they never intersect, they have the same slope. Perpendicular lines are a little more complicated, but not too bad. Now, they do intersect, but they have to intersect at a 90-degree angle. Because of that, their slopes are what we call opposite reciprocal. I know we know what opposite means, but reciprocal is a pretty big word too. Let's back up and we'll talk about that in just a second. First, I want to go back to parallel. If a question asks me about parallel slope, well, it's the same slope, so I keep it the same. I don't change anything. It's the same sign, it's the same number. I keep it exactly the same. If the question asks me about perpendicular slope, I need the opposite. When I say opposite, that means I change the sign. So if it's positive, I make it negative. If it's negative, I make it positive. That's our opposite portion of this. For reciprocal, what that means is I flip the fraction. So reciprocal means flip the fraction. Let's look at a few examples here, and that'll really help us understand this a little bit better. For our first one, number 1, we have the slope of 2/3. For parallel lines, we keep it the same, so we don't change anything. It stays 2/3. For perpendicular, we have opposite reciprocal. We change the sign. 2/3 is positive, so I put in negative. And then I flip the fraction. So 2/3 becomes 3/2. For number 2, parallel slope, I keep it the same. I don't do anything different, so it stays -3/5. For a perpendicular slope, I have to change the sign. Negative becomes positive, so I don't put anything in there in front of the number. And then I flip the fraction. 3/5 becomes 5/3. Let's look at number 3. If we have a slope of 4, the parallel line is the same. We don't do anything different, so it stays 4. Perpendicular slope, we change the sign. It's positive, so we put negative. And then we flip the fraction. But wait a minute, 4 is not a fraction. Well, it could be. 4/1 is the same thing as 4. So what we do is we put 4 on the bottom of the fraction and put 1 on the top. So the opposite, or the reciprocal of 4, is 1/4. So that's what fraction I put in here. For my last one, number 4, for the slope of the line that's parallel is, you guessed it, stays the same, it's -2. Perpendicular slope, we want to change the sign. Negative becomes positive. We want to flip the fraction. And just like 4, what we do is this 2 now goes on the bottom. So it is positive 1/2. All right, so that's our basics for parallel and perpendicular slope. Next, we'll talk about how to apply these on some of our harder questions.